Good evening and welcome. This is the People's Platform. The Sri Lankan Constitution recognizes that there are two official languages in Sri Lanka, Sinhalese and Tamil. English is recognized as the link language. Today's discussion will focus on the systemic problems of learning English in Sri Lanka. To discuss the implications and the ground realities of this, we've invited to our studios Dr. Madhubhashini Disanayaka Ratnayaka. She functions as a senior lecturer at the Department of English Language Teaching, University of Sri Jayawardenepura. Good evening and welcome to you.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Madhubhashini, let's speak about the lack of accessibility, the classism, elitism that is so entrenched in English language education, English language speaking. We see this in Sri Lanka, and we've seen this through the past several decades. Speak to us about how much of an issue this is, so that we can get on to the other issues in more detail later on.
Sonali, thank you for starting with things which are not easily admitted in the field of English language teaching, which is that it's connected to class, it's connected to elitism, it's connected to keeping people out, so to say, in particular forums, because that is something we don't normally talk when we talk about English language teaching, and we think it's just a simple matter of trying to tell people how to use a language. And I have always, from the beginning, made a case that without politics, don't try to teach adults English, because there's a whole lot of baggage they carry by the time they come to the university. And I'm talking about University Sonali because that's where I teach, and that's where I first became aware of the problems. So that if we don't talk about everything you just mentioned naturally and just think this is a language, just learn it, it's not going to work. It cannot possibly work.
So you spoke about how exclusionary English language learning is, and in the university system we see how out of the blue young adults are expected to speak English no matter where they came from. So they could be from a village in Hambantota or Pudukudirippu, but they need to just know English.
Yes, and the worst part is we make them feel very bad if they can't do it. So this discourse of failure is very connected to knowing English. So no matter how good you are in whatever discipline, even when you pass out, somehow in Sri Lanka we have kind of got them to feel that if they don't know English, you've failed in a little way, right? And this is very heartbreaking. I'll tell you why. Because yes, you have to know it. I mean, all my talks about this, it doesn't mean that they don't have to know it. Yes, learn it. But the fact that you couldn't learn it till you're an adult is more a problem of the system than a personal failure. And this is something that we do. And I think Dr. Prabha Manuratna had written a beautiful article called Kolambata Kiri Apata Kakiri, where she uses the term responsibilization.
Okay.
That the problem is within the system, but the system covers itself up by pushing it to the others, the students in this example,
right,
by saying if you can't learn English, it's your problem. When the real issue is we don't have enough English teachers teaching in the rural areas. Even if they do, their own English may not be that good. Right? And we simply don't have enough young people going out to the really rural areas to teach this language. We call it Dushkara Palata, and the first thing many try to do is come out of it. So when the system is so flawed, we have to admit it. Why make the young people feel bad, personally inferior, for not knowing this language? So I think that's where we need to start and very openly discuss what the problems are, make them feel, yes, this is a problem, at least now you're here, at least now let's try, but also not to expect miracles, Sonali, because I'm running on now to another issue. Very often departments of English language teaching get blamed when students can't speak English in the 4th year. But the fact is, if you're a adults, 4 years, right? And many campuses, not mine, thank goodness, have about 2 hours of English a week.
Right.
You know, it's not knowing about the language. This is the problem. You can teach about English maybe in 2 hours a week, but to get them to talk, to get them to use it, to get them to be comfortable with it, there is no way 2 hours is enough if you're living in Sri Lanka. Yes, if you're immersed in the language, like you might be in the UK or the USA, enough. Because naturally 24/7 they hear the language. But here you can survive very easily without hearing a word of English if you want to, especially in the arts faculties, right? And then to give departments maybe 2 or even 4 hours and expect us to get them to at a particular standard where they can deal with subjects, I mean, that is just impossible.
So the root cause, one of the root causes is that the system is so flawed and it has been manipulated in such a way as to create these exclusionary frameworks.
Yes, system being flawed, I guess it has also a practical problem connected to it. Who teaches? It's a very simple question, Sonali. Who is there to teach these thousands of school children? Because no graduate with an English degree is going to go out there and try and teach English. So who? So you can put on paper, there has to be English taught in schools, but who? Then how? Because very often another sad things I know is English is not taught in a fun, exciting way, right? And an example which I spoke about, before, I had a girl who came to my class in campus and she used to come every day. And she was like interested enough. I used to teach poetry in my English language classes because another thing I felt was to restrict something as beautiful as a poem to English departments was a crime.
Of course.
Because these people could understand beauty of language. Just because they couldn't understand English didn't mean they didn't have the necessary aesthetics to appreciate something beautiful.
Yeah.
She could turn a very simple poem into her own life and give it to me, and I used to talk to her. She said, "This is the first time I'm coming for English classes." And I asked her why. She said the very first day I went to English in class, right, she was given a hit on the head, a slight hit, and called Modi stupid. And she said, "I never meant. It's easy to cut English classes." She did. So we have multiple problems in teaching. I'm not blaming the teachers. I'm sure there are many who try very hard, but how we teach, and this is not, I think, restricted even to English. Education has to be kind of entertaining in a way, not in a shallow way, but it has to be enjoyable. For the children to learn, they have to be excited about it. They have to see that it's relevant to their lives. So that, when you enjoy something, Sonali, you learn it much faster. So especially in the primary school, especially in the nursery, if we can somehow make English relevant, fun, entertaining, so that they look forward to it and are not scared of it, I think half the battle will be won.
Absolutely. Speaking about students, sometimes one of the common misconceptions that we have in society is that intelligence is equated to your competence of the English language, which is complete nonsense.
Sadly, very much so. Because, sometimes I feel that, this is not difficult to understand. That language is still a language, but it's connected to that sense of failure, so that the students themselves, and again this is something I see in my language classes in Japura, in Jawadanapura, where we have 10 hours a week, because for some reason when I was the head, the faculty listened to me when I spoke like this and gave me 2 hours every day. So the first year start 8 to 10 English, and they cleared their own timetables to give us that chance. And this is where I'm lucky to have, ended up in a campus like that. We do English, and we teach in peer groups, small groups, so that they can actually be an important member within that small group, right? And we tell them to appoint a leader. Invariably, it's that person who knows a little bit of English that becomes a leader. Not because it's in a language class, they think that's a person who will, is worthy of being a leader. And it's not just in class, Sonali, everywhere. If you take anyone in an interview, I realize that English is necessary. It's a global language. But we would simply not even consider someone, no matter whether he gets a first class or not, if they don't know English. And my problem is why? Because if we take, now there's a big if here, if we take away the sense of you're not good enough and not laugh at his broken English, right? I am almost sure that that person would be a very hard worker within that organization and can help. And if Sri Lankans can be a little bit more accommodating for what you call broken English and not laugh and not scorn it so much, there'll be so many young people less scared of trying. They don't even try.
The main purpose of having you on the English show, because I did have a conversation
Yes.
with you on our English edition of the same program, was because the audience that watches this show will be those that are in a position of power to empower themselves with the knowledge that, look, maybe if I'm the CEO of a corporate, I shouldn't discriminate, even unknowingly, a person who is not so conversant in English. If he or she is competent in the area of that profession, then maybe that's what I should be focusing on. And probably I should, start a training program, have language learning skills in my office. So that's the kind of enabling environment that we're also trying to create, because a society that can ensure these high standards of language communication, so that we can also go to the international stage, is of pivotal importance, and it's a vital responsibility.
I think, Sonali, the irony is, in an international stage, broken English is accepted absolutely almost 100%.
Yeah, because
No one
language,
laughs.
you just need language to communicate something clearly. That's it.
Absolutely. And no one laughs. You know, they listen with respect. I was recently listening to a Nobel Prize acceptance speech. Their own languages, and the translation is given, right? This thing about feeling inadequate because we don't know English, I think is a bit Sri Lankan.
Yeah.
No one loves. So I remember Professor Amarakirti one day saying he learned English with great difficulty through reading, and he was scared to face a Fulbright scholarship the first time. He didn't go, even if he was called.
Okay.
Second time he did go, and told in his broken English, no, I think I am capable of studying in this language, give me a chance. They did. He got a doctorate, professor now, brilliant writer.
Okay.
And he said, from day one I got help. There are special classes for it. Of course, it was also immersive.
Right.
So there, if the Fulbright, the panel of judges didn't trust him, we would have lost a very good professor in our system right now. So that trust, I am very grateful that, I got a chance to speak to the exact crowd that you say. There are a lot of additional problems, because I said it's not just about English. It's also about cultural stuff, which some people might not happily give in to.
Okay.
Right? For example, bending your ethics to fit a corporate world, there will be people like that. But there will be people who are very willing to join, very willing to be loyal, very willing to get into that cultural code of ethics kind of, it's dress, everything, right? And those people not being given a chance is almost a crime, because they might be very, very clever. Right? It needs not just entrance, it needs a community of workers who will not make that person feel less, simply because he cannot speak a language he did not grow up with. Right? Now that is crucial, Sonali, because if we grew up with a language, we wouldn't even worry about not being fluent in it. It comes naturally, right? But in Sri Lanka, the moment you say we grew up with the language, we immediately speak about class. Because given the way we got English, which is during the colonial times, only the people who could afford the fee to missionary schools could send their kids to it. So from day one, English was connected to money, to wealth. So from that time, our ancestors knew that those who could speak English were rich. A little bit different in Jaffna because American missionaries created a lot of schools there. A little bit different. I think Colombo people didn't want it, so they shifted many schools there. So the missionary education, being open to fee-living people who could afford the fee, put wealth right at the beginning of English. And we have had centuries of not feeling good about not knowing this language because it's connected to wealth, because it's connected to class. Worldwide, class is another phenomenon which is hugely unfair, nevertheless hugely present. And people all over pay the price for it.
I'd also like to speak a bit about the sense of self-worth, the sense of dignity that is at times attached to speaking a language. In this case, we're talking about English, and there's this thing about society. I don't know if it's like a pseudo sadism where you want to look down upon or humiliate the person who doesn't speak the language with as much competence as you. What is that all about?
It's not even pseudo-sadism, it's just sadism. You know, I always feel we like to protect our own turf because beginning with the fact that there are not many resources to go around in the country or in the world, you tend to put boundaries on what you have. So if we were to make people with substandard English come in, you know, you're opening out your walls a bit. And many people don't like that because they are very secure, they are very comfortable in their little enclosures. So there is a gatekeeping process, Sonali, which you might easily see. For example, in a public space, if someone tries to speak English and makes a pronunciation mistake or uses a substandard idiom, there'll be immediate, they may not say anything, but we might look at each other. Or, you know, with the expression, you kind of signal that this is not one of us. And trust me, people know it when that happens. So the choice is to be quiet. In universities, I have seen people be very quiet. And it's not even taken as a problem. Because I have got into trouble, I think twice, when I questioned some writers who joke about this accent in their own writing. And one example I speak about, he's not even Sri Lankan, but he was reading, and it's a good writer, you know, you want to admire them. And he said, you know, these Sri Lankans are really weird. They don't say anything when I'm speaking in public. Now, this is abroad. But they follow me to the bathroom and say, hi, I'm Sri Lankan and all that jazz. And when he was reading, when he came to a Sri Lankan dialogue of a speaker who couldn't speak English very well, he put that accent, you know, that it's called a Notpot accent, I don't know. And everybody was in laughter, was laughing in the audience. And I remember asking, could you please tell me why you changed the accent? And he said, to get laughs. And then I said, do you know that kind of attitude keeps thousands of people quiet here because I am trying to teach adults. And then what he said, which was even more shocking, this was kind of an expensive context. He said, yes, but I don't think they're here today.
Wow.
Right? And Sonali, they don't see a problem. And I said, I've been trying to teach English to adults, and this is attitudes like that. It's funny. And you know how many language jokes go around?
Yeah.
It does hurt them.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt people who know the language.
Yeah.
But it's about self-worth, and we are actually laughing at ourselves.
Of course.
And I'm glad you spoke about the fact that I spoke in Sinhala and English, because when I speak in Sinhala, I tell people who get laughed at, don't worry too much about it, because we've got English with a sense of inferiority, because when the British people came during the colonization project, which, if you ask me, is one of the most criminal projects ever devised on this planet, we were made to feel inferior so that we could respect them as being the most civilized person. So anyone who didn't know their language automatically became less civilized. So we got it with inferiority. And we were very, very quick, especially Sri Lankans. And if you look at our national leaders, they studied at Oxford, they wanted to belong to that world. So that our sense of worth was very closely connected to the knowledge of English. And I don't think Sri Lankans ever got out of that framework of thinking. So that to laugh at someone not knowing the language, you're actually perpetuating the same things that the white colonizer may have given you. You actually haven't gone away from that framework. So I try to tell my students, if someone does laugh at you, I mean, naturally you'll feel bad, you might get angry, but also pity that person, because that person may not be aware of the historic process that brought him to this point. And if, because I'm speaking in English today, if you are actually somebody who does laugh, please think of what that means. Are you then actually not proud of not knowing that language? I'm not saying you should be proud of not knowing English, but it doesn't really take away anything from a person who's fluent in his own mother tongue, Sinhala or Tamil. Respect that person if he's trying to learn. Respect the fact that he is courageous enough to use a language at the level he can, because unless he uses it, he's not going to learn. You've got to use a language to learn it, which is a problem in teaching. Just teaching grammar rules really doesn't mean anything, Sonali. They've got to use it. But if our public keeps laughing at what we call substandard English, they are surely not going to use it in public. So you yourself, you might be someone not even remotely connected to English. But if you're in a class that speaks English, if you change your attitude or your mind about what you might call substandard English, you are actually helping this whole process of learning English and teaching English as a second language here.
And since we're looking at this from a very solutions-oriented approach, we also need to perhaps tell our audience that if you know those who unknowingly or without realizing the repercussions laugh at someone who doesn't speak conversantly in English, call them out, because it's just plain and simple bullying, and it shows one's own lack of self-awareness and lack insecurity
of knowledge,
and
I think, Sonali.
Sadism, frankly.
Yes. And lack of historical knowledge of how we got here. Because it was part of the Western. I might sound as if I'm really angry with the West, which is not the case. I love their literature. I love there's good and bad in everything, my culture and their culture. So though I'm criticizing the West here, there's a whole lot I get from them. My master's was there and all that. But you've got to get the best out of everything and take away the worst. Kick it out. So if we got a sense of inferiority about who we are from anywhere, kick that out.
Yeah, of course, we need to decolonize our minds.
At first there. Absolutely there first. So all this, and you spoke about solutions. May I go to some solutions that I have put in practice?
Absolutely. I'd like us to delve into the solutions in more detail.
Okay.
Let's do that right after this short commercial break.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
අධ්‍යාපනය, ව්‍යවස්ථාව, කෘෂිකර්මය, ආර්ථිකය, සෞඛ්‍ය, ජාත්‍යන්තර, බුද්ධිමය සංවාදය බ්‍රහස්පතින්දා රාත්‍රී 10:30 මාවත ශ්‍රී ලංකා සතියේ දිනවල උදෑසන 7ට.
Welcome back. We're in conversation with Dr. Madhubhashini Disanayaka Ratnayaka, Senior Lecturer, Department of English Language Teaching, University of Sri Jayawardhanapura. Let's discuss a bit about the solutions when it comes to the systemic problems of learning English in Sri Lanka. You have a fantastic initiative at the university itself. Speak to us about that first, and then we'll move on to the other solutions.
Right. I would call it an attempt more than a solution, because you can only try.
Absolutely.
Right? So one thing I did realize, and it's very interesting how I got into the English for Fun project, Sonali, because I'll hop back into 2 other projects I did. Right? When I was teaching adults English, one thing I realized is they need to practice. They need to use. The reason they don't use it is because there is no person to speak with. So my first project was called Bhasha Buddies, where a lot of us who knew English anonymously on different SIMs, we put a Google form in campus. The campus has always helped me, University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, to apply to text in English and be texted. We had a time given, texted complete strangers just to practice. And one thing I realized while I was doing it is that they are not immersed in the language and they are scared. Then I kind of halted it a bit and went to my own channel called Atharamadiyawa, where I give culturally relevant conversations in English and Sinhala. I wish, Sonali, I knew Tamil to do it in all 3 languages, but I don't. That's kind of an embarrassment we all carry, most of us, that we are not trilingual. So what I did is, for example, Professor Amarakirti, I asked him how he learnt English. He spoke in Sinhala, then he said almost the same thing in English. Professor Sasanka, Sinhala and English. So that you have a scaffolding from the Sinhala interview, and if you are interested, you have the English.
Right.
And it's a Sri Lankan accent. So that they have culturally relevant, educationally relevant conversations happening in a YouTube channel given free. And I was incredibly lucky, because most of the professors I asked, academics I asked, artists I asked, yes. So they have and I did grammar lessons and spoke about the non-necessity of grammar. Imagine having grammar lessons and saying it's not important, because many adults in my Bhasha Buddy program said, Miss, we don't know grammar. They didn't even call me Miss, they didn't know who I was. We don't know grammar. So I'm still putting the grammar lessons up there, right? Then I realized that, more than anything we can do, if we can just tap kids, very young people. That's how I learned English, Sonali, because I was lucky enough to be born in a family that my parents spoke both languages, right? We didn't have to learn, and then thank God they could afford to send me into a convent school where the knowledge was English. So this background is limited to very few people. What if we try to at least give a little bit of that to people who don't normally hear both languages in school? So there, now I came to the English for Fun project, because again, to make it fun was vital. Kids will not learn this is the present simple tense and so on and so forth, right? But they can sing. No kind of shame is connected to getting someone to sing a nursery rhyme, right? So for years, maybe 5 years ago, I went to the education minister and said, let's do it this way, but of course it's difficult to change systems. They have to be really formally done, and no one listened to me. Luckily, the northern province got in touch with me, because my idea, Professor Rajiva Vijayasinghe had sent to India. They had developed a syllabus and they sent it here with a huge, costing. And then someone had said, look, we didn't have the money in this country at that time, nothing. Someone had said, look, the original idea came from a Sri Lankan contactor. So the Northern Province Governor's Secretariat contacted me, and I drew up a syllabus, and I realized how bad the situation was, Sonali, because there was absolutely no English teacher to teach even a fun syllabus. So then I was like, now what? Then we thought of audio tracks, because you can send an audio track and the teacher can read it in Tamil and make them hear the audio track in English. So we devised a syllabus on audio tape, which can be piloted to any place that doesn't have an English speaker. Right? Luckily for me, the audio tapes, both my kids are trained musicians. They did the audio tracks with Harin Amithanathan, who is a choir director of the Colombo Philharmonic Choir. Just free. 3 of them did their own music, recorded it. The stories were read by Tusita Jayasundara, who is perhaps the best Sri Lankan actress living in the UK. Right? All free, Sonali. Just immediately when I ask people, they see the value of it. It's crucial that that you get people who understand you and don't think of money first. We had this syllabus. We sent it to the North. It's being piloted there in 30 schools, 30 nurseries. And then I was thinking it's already there. I asked my campus, and my friend is a very close friend, is the librarian there. Right? Once I said we have this thing, can we use it to send this to everywhere, to everyone in this country through the library system? Because I had done enough research during my PhD, Sonali, to know that we have a very strong library system. Every village has at least a small room with books. So I was thinking, if we have an English syllabus on audio tape, if we send it across to the libraries, then any kid who is growing up in an environment that doesn't have English can be brought to the library. 2 benefits. He or she will look at books, plus listen to English songs and stories. Just those 2, no grammar, nothing. And luckily for me, Nayana took me to, Dr. Nayana Vijayasundara is the librarian of the University of Srijanapura. She took me to the National Library Services Board. 1 meeting, Sonali, they agreed. So now we are slowly in the process of doing it. Nayana and I in April are going to Doluwa, so we go around, we do Zoom meetings, because one thing they don't understand is what good would a song do. And I'm like, would that when the baby goes to sleep? Because it becomes part of their life. And these audio tracks are held in the website, in the library, emailed free to anyone who asks. So they are quietly asking. And it goes, and all I'm saying is put it when they sleep. Forget about learning. But that baby is going to grow up with English as she or he will connect English with love. Because if the mother is snuggling him or her, putting her to sleep while the English is being played in the background, just like our Doi Doi Doya Baba or Ambili Mame, she's going to connect English with love and security and warmth, and not inferiority and toku.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
can, think differently, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Let's speak about the role of businesses, the private sector, in ensuring that young adults from rural areas of Sri Lanka who haven't been exposed to English language learning at school level, how they can be incorporated into the organizations where English is the predominant language.
Yeah.
Without discomfort.
Correct. Everybody has been exposed. How efficient it is another
Correct.
point altogether. Again, as I said, Sonali, there is an issue there because you need to communicate, right? So firstly, change the attitude of the people, all the workers around you. Secondly, put good programs in place where they actively use the language, right? So people don't use it when they are scared. So maybe get a trainer in to give the basics, but practice, use it. Because there is no way I don't think you can teach English. You can only learn it. And learning happens through usage. You can teach about the language, but you've got to use it. We don't give a context for use. So in any workplace, maybe a 3-month intensive course on basic stuff about what is a sentence and all that. Not so much grammar. Use it, because when we learn Sinhala, if you learn about language acquisition, we never learn Sinhala, no? Sonali, because we heard our parents speak, we spoke it. Even English, no one taught us grammar. Grammar is only at linguistic level.
Yeah.
But an adult, because he's an adult, needs the, why am I doing this? Therefore, we put grammar into place. So, to your question, a corporate world that accepts wrong English till they are learning, gives them some intensive training and tells all the workers, you are the class, technically not an English class, but as you work, use English with them, explain without ridicule. So that, and they will learn. I don't think foreigners will very much mind broken English, but the basics they have to learn how to communicate. Communication is the essential component, not whether you know how to say the S after the third person singular.
I'd like to connect this conversation to the state machinery, because ultimately there are government bodies which have been vested with the responsibility of ensuring and enabling education in Sri Lanka. So the Ministry of Education is the main body, the National Institute of Education, the NIE, Teacher Training Institute has to play a main role in ensuring that teachers are trained adequately, and all these bodies need to be work collaboratively, which isn't really happening. There has to be enough budgetary allocation for education. Speak to us about all of this.
I actually wouldn't know, Sonali, because my way of behaving is, if I see something I can't go through, I just go over or on the side. Because there's a limited energy all of us have, no?
Sure.
I did go to the minister. I do still talk to the NIE. But if they don't get active, because systems are very cumbersome. There is such a, I don't know, I think state machinery anywhere. It's such a vast network of, I can't say, I would rather not use adjectives here, but it's big. You can't move them. And you might wonder what are they doing here? Like, for example, I keep thinking, to teach in primary school without fun, without enjoyment, and with, even people hitting them. I mean, we are talking about problems at massive levels. Forget English, generally. Right? So, what? You got to pick your fights. So, whether school system itself. So, no. So you go around, because you do what you can. That's why I said, this may fail. But all of us as individuals, what we can do is try to put an alternative in place. And if 10 people changed, that's enough. Maybe 20 years from now, maybe people would have, I wouldn't see the results of this, Sonali. I'll probably be dead by then. All we can do is try and keep hoping, because this country needs those cycles to break. We teach our kids English, they teach their kids English, and we are fine. We are going in this little cycle. What we need is those cycles to break. And not with animosity. Get others included, be inclusive in our culture, in our corporate world, because it's not their fault. And people are like, whatever, they're asking for a fairer deal all over. You might call them terrorists or whatever, but all they want is a fairer deal. And when it's not there, things can get dangerous. We have lived through that time. A fairer deal, like, not a few people making it and the rest just falling off the planet. No. Let's all rise together. Maybe the others may have to come down a bit to make it more inclusive, but that is where we need to go.
Speaking about structures and having some method to the madness, speak to us about how absurd it is to have a child go through 13 years of formal education and then right after that expect the child to know English. What if we changed it around and focused more on early childhood development, the nursery education, grade 1, 2, 3, this is where the child is most resilient?
I would probably lose my job, because I think all of us, if we concentrated on that age group, probably won't have jobs here. Because why? Again, connected, Sonali, who wants to go and teach to that teacher's salary? We are getting a lecturer's salary. So if I had a choice, naturally, I would choose this. Right? We need to see that the best people get into the nurseries and the primaries.
Absolutely.
The cost of, I thought I misheard this, the payment that nursery teachers get, or whoever, the guardians or whatever, is 6,000 a month. 6,000 a month. So what, Sonali? So what I'm saying is, I don't know, I think nursery teachers here, I'm talking about the northern province, right? I don't know whether it's changed now, but teachers here get a very low salary, while as the best of us should be grooming the next generation, right? Teachers shouldn't be those who do it because there's nothing else to do. So I hope I'm not sounding negative about teachers. There are fantastic teachers trying to do their best within limited conditions.
Yeah.
But from ideology downwards, right? And people might criticize me as well. They might say, why would you listen to a song? What does it do? So it's these different ways of thinking that I may be wrong, I don't know, I'm just so sure of it. But it doesn't mean I'm correct. But there are different ways of doing stuff. Maybe we can try this, maybe we should try it, simply because this time the batch came, I had 4 or 5 people sitting in front of me. I interview the whole, our DELT interviews the whole batch one-to-one to put it into their heads that English language is talking and writing, and you get individual attention. I had 4 to 5 people sitting and saying, Miss Mata English වචනයක් කියන්න බෑ. And I'm not imagining it. So if the conditions are that bad, try something else also. Because that is what university academics are paid to do. We are meant to question the system if it's not working, right? And not just, research is very important. I do that as well. Like, yes, but I really think we can't afford the luxury of just being book bound when the country is crying out for change.
What is your appeal to the audience watching us right now in a minute?
Please change your attitude about those who don't know English very well. Remember the historical, social conditions that made them this, and it has nothing to do with their intelligence or their loyalty or their ability to work. But if we give them a chance, right? And I'm not asking for pity because they don't need it. That's not what they need. They need a fairer playing ground. Like Dr. Atwata, Professor Harshana Rambukwala, they have always. I remember going to a conference where Dr. Atwata said, what fairness is there when 13 years of no English and they all sit the same exam? There are researchers who have done this. You change your attitude, it might help people you don't even know who might benefit by a kind of at least in our country, a combined change of attitude by those who do know English.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Madhubhashini Dissanayake Ratnayake, for this conversation. Thank you for watching us. We'll see you again on Monday with the Sinhala edition of the program. Have a safe weekend. Good night.